कैसे हो आप दोस्तों? होप आप सब लोग बहुत अच्छे हो. So we are back again. We are back again with the third poetry of the Flamingo book. इस poetry का नाम है Thing of Beauty. And it's written by John Keats. So John Keats, दोस्तों, as you might be knowing, as you would have heard the name, is one of the biggest names in poetry. He's one poet who is kind of, जैसे कहते हैं ना कि एक्टिंग का मतलब अमिताभ बच्चन है, वैसे रोमांटिक पोएम्स का मतलब जॉन कीट्स है. तो जॉन कीट्स की जो पोएम्स हैं, स्पेशली रोमांटिक पोएम्स, वर वन ऑफ देयर काइंड्स, ड्यूरिंग देयर टाइम्स, and is still regarded as one of the key works in romantic poetry. And the beauty about his poems is that, especially this poem, is that he compares everything with nature, and how he feels that beauty is one thing that helps us to come out of the suffering, come out of the desolate pain, come out of the little troubles that we have in life, and beauty helps us to come out of it. इसका एक background भी मैं दूँ, and to our surprise as well, that John Keats lived till the age of 25. So he was affected by tuberculosis during that time, uh, early part of the 18th century, and since he was himself in a lot of pain, or pain, during the times when he was writing poetry, he again, was looking at or referring to sufferings that probably he was undergoing at that point as well, and how he used to come out of it by thinking of beauty and different things of nature. And very beautifully he has drafted these things. So let's look at the poem. It's very nice. First, about the author, I just mentioned, about John Keats. John Keats was one of the very famous poems of UK origin during the early part of the 18th century. He originally was a surgeon, and he quit his profession, and because of poetry, because he was in love with poetry so much. Uh, uh, he was a key figure in the second generation of romantic poets. Keats' life was overshadowed by tuberculosis, then called consumption. He lost his father, mother, and brother due to the disease before catching it himself. Why this matters for the poem? When Keats writes about the pale over our dark spirits and the unhealthy and over darkened ways of life, he's speaking from personal experience. His obsession with immortal beauty was a way to escape the nothingness of his own failing health. So as I stated, that since his health was also one of the key things why he was witnessing so much pain in his life, and that how it was transferred, or you can see that pain in the poetry that he was writing as well. And he was a great poet when it comes to writing about nature, about beauty of nature, and the words and the phrases that he used was mind blowing during that time. So let's look at the poem, and let's look at what the poem is saying, right? So, a brief summary: the poem opens with the famous line, "A thing of beauty is a joy forever." Keats argues that beauty is not temporary, it increases over time, never fades into nothingness. So, essentially, he states, and he starts off with one of the proverbs, that beauty never fades away, and it kind of grows over time, and how it grows over time and how it helps him to kind of come up out of the sufferings that we'll see. He compares a beautiful thing to the quiet bower, a peaceful, shady place under trees that provides her with sweet dreams, health, and quiet breathing. Even though life is full of suffering, disappointment, and gloomy days, beautiful things acts as a pall that lifts the sadness from our spirits. So I mean, like, that's part of a phrase itself, when that we'll see separately in the poem. But when one of the key things that he does was, he compares a beautiful thing to a quiet bower, a peaceful, shady place under trees that provides it with sweet dreams. So quiet bower, and this means, let's say, you have a very big tree, and a place under it will provide us a comfortable and a peaceful place. So in the same way, he says beauty gives us that bower in life, and helps us to gives us that calm that we need to come out of the suffering that we face. So that's what he epitomizes in the poem. So let's move ahead. Let's look at a stanza by stanza breakfast. Since this is a little tough poem, I have given the wordings as well. So let's look at the text as well. A thing of beauty is a joy forever. Its loveliness increases. It will never pass into nothingness, but it will keep a bower quiet for us and a sleep full of sweet dreams and health and quiet breathing. So essentially, he's kind of, as I mentioned in the previous slide as well, he is comparing beauty with a bower, or a, a quiet place that you find under a big tree. And he states that, it grows and grows and grows and grows, like the tree grows, the space grows, and beauty always grows. It never kind of goes down. That's what he means. And the sleep, and he gives us sleep full of dreams, health, and quiet breathing. That's what he says, that beauty gives us that feeling, or that space that helps us to come out of our sufferings. Unlike physical trends, its value only grows with time. It provides a bower, right? It's a metaphorical shelter. This mental peace leads to sound sleep, good health, and a calm spirit. As we have already discussed. Now let's look at the second phase, where he looks at the struggle of life versus beauty. So now he comes up, it's kind of some of the sufferings that he is also undergoing. So he tries to translude that in the poem. Therefore, on every morrow, are we wreathing a flowery band to bind us to the earth? Spite of despondence, of the inhuman dearth, of noble natures of the gloomy days, of all the unhealthy and dour darkened ways made for our searchings, yes, in spite of all, some shape of beauty moves away the pall from our dark spirits. So essentially it talks around, the sufferings and the bad days that one faces. Like, for example, flowery band to bind us to the earth. So something like, some of the suffering that binds us to the earth, that kind of wraps up and kind of binds us to the earth. Spite of despondence, of the inhuman dearth of noble natures. So essentially, he talks about the hopelessness that one feels. He talks about the gloomy days that one feels. One kind of suffers. And then he talks at the end, some shape of beauty move away from the pall from our dark space. Then, however, some shape of beauty acts as a hand that pulls away from the pall. So pall essentially is a funeral cloth. Like, so for example, because of the gloomy days, a pall is wrapped around our body, and how beauty comes up and takes out that pall from our body. Pall is like a, like a cloth that's kind of put on the dead. So like the beauty comes and takes that cloth away from us. Every morning we look for beautiful things to give us a reason to keep living. Keats acknowledges that life is hard, filled with hopelessness and sadness. However, some shape of beauty acts as a hand that pulls away the pall from our depressed souls. That's what he means. Let's look at the third stanza. Third stanza again, he uses nature to talk about beautiful things. Various forms of nature, various objects of nature. So let's look at it. Such the sun, the moon, the trees, old and young sprouting a shady boon. For simple, cheap, and such are daffodils with the green world they live in, and clear rills that for themselves a cooling covert make against the hot season. The mist for a break, the rich with sprinkling of fair musk rose blooms. So, like for example, he says that these are specific things of nature which helps them, which is beautiful, right? So, for example, he talks about the sun, the moon, trees, and young sprouting a shady boon. So, shady boon essentially would mean, a boon or a blessing in disguise. So let's say, we are like at every night when we are kind of embraced with darkness, the sun would come and give us that light that would take out that darkness of our lives. So in the same way, he compares, so the poet, he can kind of imagine anything, right? So he imagines that these things of nature, or these objects of nature, acts as shady boons that, or acts as boons in disguise that, takes us our sufferings. And then he mentions daffodils in the meadows. Daffodils are sort of flowers, and daffodils in the meadows, and clear rills that create their own cooling environment to hide from the hot summer. So like the daffodils, they come in the environment, they create a space which is not so hot, right? Essay he talks about clear rills. clear rays are small streams, that provide the coolness and that saves us from hot winters. So like the way he compares these pieces of nature that helps a person to come to save us from hot environment. In the same way, he says that like the same way beauty helps us to come out of that sufferings that we are having. He also highlights the beauty of the mist forest break filled with blooming musk roses. These are again natural. He compares beauty with these natural things, and like the way these objects help person to come out of darkness, for example, or from hot temperature. In the same way, beauty helps a person to come out of the sufferings that he's talking about. And then at the end he talks about the beauty of literature and legacy, and in the and at the end he says that beauty is just not in nature created objects, it's also in human created objects, right? So for example, he compares beauty with various beautiful works of literature that one reads, or in terms of, or the legacies, or the people who have done great things in their lives. Those reading those things or witnessing those things also help us to come out of the sufferings. That's what he means. And such too is the grandeur of the dooms we have imagined for the mighty dead. All lovely tales that we have heard or read, an endless fountain of immortal drink pouring onto us from the heaven spring. This is a very nice phrase that he talks about, pouring onto us from the heaven spring. He talks about the divine nectar, endless fountain. Like for example, it's said that कि जैसे जैसे फूलों को चांदनी मिलती है, nectar, जैसे कि for example you get good smell in roses, that is a natural smell that you get, that these roses get from nature. In the same way, he compares these things with the divine nectar or the divine nature that is always flowing onto this earth. He compares these two things together. Beauty isn't just in nature, it's also in human creation. The grandeur of the dooms refers to the magnificent stories of heroes who died noble deaths. All the great literature and myth we have read is like an endless fountain of divine nectar poured down from heaven to sustain our souls. Like the nectar, like the immortal drink that is continuously flowing into this environment, is something that he compares these tales and this literature with. So this was the text and the explanation, and we look at some of the critical things that he has used, like some of the metaphors, some of the poetic devices that he has used. We look at that as well. The flowery band. This means that the beautiful things we see in nature are what keeps us connected to life even when we are unhappy. Without beauty, the world would be too inhuman to endure. The immortal fountain, I've just discussed that. It's that the lovely tales we have heard and read are just as beautiful as nature. They are like the divine gift poured into us from the heaven spring. And these are some of the poetic devices. First some of the metaphors. So metaphors, again, as I have already mentioned in my previous poems as well, these are two unrelated things stating one as the other, right? For example, boer quiet. So beauty is compared to a peaceful shady shelter that protects us from the heat. So like the flowery band we have just discussed, the endless fountain of immortal drink that flows from heaven. Pal is, again, we have discussed that again in the text, the cloth that is kind of put on a person who is dead. So pal is like the sadness, and how beauty helps us to remove that cloth. That's what he talks about. Alliteration is, again, when two words are creating a similar sound. Like for example, sleep full of sweet dreams, repetition of the S sound, noble natures, cooling convert, band to mind. These were some of the alliterations that were used in the text, and that kind of, helps the poet to imagine certain things in the poem. Then imaginary are, again, some of the imaginations that he has used to create mental pictures. Like for example, daffodils with the green world they live in, the clear rills, the musk rose blooms. We've seen it in the text that daffodils are kind of flowers that were there. Clear rills, again, are the cold small streams that are flowing. Musk rose blooms, cooling convert the feeling of coolness against the heat. Antitheses are two opposing ideas together stated in one phrase. For example, old and young used to describe the tree, suggesting that beauty exists in all stages of life from the beginning to the end. So this is again one of the phrase that he use. Inversion, again this is again a type of poetic device when the order of the words are reversed. When like you have a subject verb and object that comes, it has an object verb and a subject that comes. So are we wreathing a flowery band? In standard English you will write it as a wreathing a flowery band. Now some of the key questions, 2-3 questions I have stated that can come in the examination, and there can be more, but this is some of the sample questions that I have put in. What does a thing of beauty provides us? Health and quiet breathing. Beauty acts like a quiet bower that offers a peaceful mental retreat. It calms the mind, reduces stress. So we have discussed this, right? That how beauty acts as a coolness against the difficulties that we are having. So first he compares beauty with nature, that like the nature helps people to kind of come out of the pain that they might face. In the same way, beauty helps them to do that as well. Grandeur of the dooms, this I think we have already seen, wherein grandeur are the great things that are done by the ancestors and the great people, and they again too acts like even though they are dead, their bravery are things of beauty that continue to inspire us. So their deeds acts like things of beauty that continues to inspire us and help us to come out of the sufferings. The mighty that are those who achieve greatness through their deeds. Their lives are so noble that their memory remains magnificent, beautiful, and even in death. So this is again the same thing. Okay, so hope this is useful, hope this is interesting. In case you have any questions, write it in the comment box. We'll come up with answers to that. And stay tuned, we'll come up with more. Thank you.